Hey there, it's Miss Birds again, and today we are going to be working on creating some value shading to our color wheel. Now, you're going to want to make sure that you have all the colored pencils or at least your primary colors. We're going to be starting with our primary colors and then we'll go to our secondary colors and we'll probably end up with our tertiary colors just on a different lesson, okay? So remember, when we talked about value as an element of art, we talked about value being the lightness and darkness of a color. And a lot of times that's easier to see when we're painting, right? Because we can add black to make it a shade, we can add white to make it a tint, and that will automatically change the value. But when you're working with a medium, such as colored pencils, the whole technique is being able to apply pressure and take pressure off of the pencil when you're coloring. And that's where we'll start to see different values. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna practice that on our color wheel today. So if you haven't already, you should have finished this ring of color, okay, on that very first section, and you should have taken a picture and put it on our last Google Classroom assignment. So if you haven't done that already, I suggest taking a picture very quickly and then starting this assignment. That way you can go back and you can actually submit the previous assignment before you do this one, so you have credit for all the assignments. So what we're gonna be doing is I'm gonna start with my yellow, because I don't know, I just like starting with yellow. It's a happy color. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start filling out this entire pie shape of yellow. Okay, now what I wanna do is I wanna change the value. So right now I have a really vibrant yellow because I pushed down really hard on my piece of paper with my pencil. And as I go down through the layers, I want to slowly have a gradual change until I can barely see the yellow of the paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on my corner, and I'm just going to rotate my paper a little bit because it's easier for me to color that way. So I'm going to start again by doing a really deep color and applying a lot of pressure. Okay, so this top section, we want a lot of pressure. Again, we want to make sure that we're coloring inside the lines. Make sure you stay just in the yellow area. And as I'm moving down towards that pie shape, I'm going to slowly start taking pressure off of my pencil until the value of yellow gets lighter and lighter as we move to the center. And at this point, as I'm getting closer to the center, I'm just barely kind of sliding my pencil across the paper and letting it make a mark. So I'm not really pushing down, I'm not applying any pressure. I probably shouldn't have started with yellow because it's probably a little bit more difficult for you guys to see on the screen. But once I get down towards the bottom, it's really just about letting the pencil slide or kind of glide across the paper. We're not even really applying pressure at that point. So remember, for a deeper color, okay, a more vibrant color, you want to make sure that you're pushing down really hard on that pencil, right? Applying a lot of pressure as we move, and we should have a nice gradual change in our value of yellow as it moves down to the center of our color wheel. So again, we don't want a very rough change, right? It should be gradual. And when I say gradual, means like a little bit at a time. So I should see that it's slowly going from this dark or bright yellow to kind of fading into a lighter yellow as it goes here. So the whole point of this assignment is that we're practicing how to take pressure on and off our paper and how to create different values when we're still using the same tool, right? Because it's not like painting where we can add black or add white to create lighter values. We have to be able to have that skill and practice it to really be able to show that we can create different values with the same tool, right? With the same object. So again, I'm just gonna go through. If you're noticing that you don't have a very good difference in color, you can always go back and try to add a little bit more value in places that should be darker. Again, I know it's probably difficult for you guys to see the yellow as it's getting towards my paper, but that's a good thing, right? Because you should be able to see a light value change. And as I'm getting towards the bottom in this section here, again, I'm just kind of gliding my pencil on the paper. I'm not really putting any pressure or applying pressure to my pencil. I'm kind of just going back and forth, and you can even hold your pencil at the very edge, the very bottom of the pencil, and just kind of let it glide back and forth, right? So I'm not putting any pressure on it. I'm kind of just letting it put down a little bit of color at a time until I see a nice gradual change. So what we don't want is to go from really, really dark yellow up here to this value down here, right? We want to see a nice slow change, medium values as it gets to this area, and then as it gets down here, it should be your lightest value. So that is what we are going to be practicing today. And I'm just going to finish up a little bit of spots in my yellow. Again, remember, if we want to go through and make a value darker, we can always color in one direction like I started, and then color in the opposite direction this way, right? And that will kind of also help to build the value a little bit. I want just a little bit more value in my midsection here. And remember, we want a gradual change, right? And when we say gradual, we really just mean a small, slight change, right? I don't want anything to go from here to here. I should be slowly progressing and changing that color. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna move on to my next color. And I'm just gonna start with my primary colors first. So I'm gonna go ahead and do red next. Okay, again, once I'm up here at the top, I wanna make sure I am applying a good amount of pressure because I still want that darker value as it goes to the top. And then I'm just going to practice slowly going through and taking pressure off of my pencil so I can get my nice mid-tones. And then as I go to the bottom, I want a really light value. So at this point, again, I'm not even applying pressure as I'm getting to this area here. I'm kind of just letting the pencil go back and forth on the paper, kind of glide across that paper. And I'm gonna start applying pressure about this point right here because I want a nice mid-tone. And then as it gets to the top again, I'm gonna start applying more pressure so I get that deeper value towards the top. Okay, and of course, I wanna make sure that it's fully colored in, right? I don't wanna see these spaces of white on the side. So I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna start coloring in the opposite direction. And it doesn't matter what direction you go in first. And you don't necessarily have to go one direction and then another direction on top of it, right? You can still stay going in this direction or still coloring in this direction. That is up to you. Okay, so again, I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure. This isn't my darkest value right here, but it is kind of my mid-tone value. So I want to apply a small amount of pressure, but not as much as I did up here in this section where it's really dark. So remember, the skill and the technique that we're practicing is just to do a little bit at a time, right? So applying a little bit of pressure at a time, taking pressure off a little bit at a time, until we can really figure out the values and determine what values look good where, right? And again, we want that nice transition of values. So it shouldn't go really, really dark to really light over here, right? It should be a very small transition from really dark down to medium to light. And again, once I get towards the center, I'm not even applying pressure on my pencil. I'm just kind of pushing the pencil back and forth a little bit. So a little bit of color gets down on that paper, but not too much. And I'm starting to see I have a little bit of a line here. So I don't know if you guys can see that on my paper. Let me try and zoom in a little bit. So if you see, it looks like there's kind of a line here where I started. So we don't want to see any lines. We want a nice smooth transition or blend. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to add a little bit more to that area so that it looks more blended out and kind of smooth the transition between that really dark value and this kind of like medium value. So again, we don't want any really harsh lines, right? We want it to look like it's blended nice and smooth into the next value. And as I go towards the top again, or the outer ring, I'm just gonna make sure I match that value to this darker area. And that's pretty much all we have to it. So remember, the whole point of this assignment is to really practice the flow of putting pressure down and taking pressure off of your pencil to get a nice smooth transition of value, right? So we're going from a really dark value on the outer ring of our color wheel, and we're creating a lighter value as we go towards the center of our color wheel. So your assignment today is to go through and to finish the rest of your color wheel doing the values. Now this may take a little bit of time, but it is just coloring, so it'll be fun time. Okay, so go ahead and I want you to finish out the whole wheel for your assignment today. Take a picture of it, put it on your Google Classroom assignment, and then keep this paper because you'll see at the bottom we have complementary, triadic, monochromatic, and analogous. And those are different types of color schemes. So we're gonna be talking about, we talked a little bit about warm and cool colors, but I wanna talk to you guys about different types of color schemes and what colors look good together other than just warm and cool colors and complementary colors, right? We have different color schemes like triadic, monochromatic, and analogous. So we're gonna be talking about that for our next lesson.